All right, we are live
Hello.
for the Shelf This Book Club for the month of. I talk slow as I'm like trying to figure out what we're doing here for the month of April with Cheyenne. This was the first time Cheyenne chose for the book club, and we're discussing The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. Yes. So whoever's here, whoever read the book, Elsa, did you get any more pages done, or are you still right at the end of part 3? And then Martine's here. I think Ruby read it, and I'm not sure who else. We'll see.
Yeah.
Do you want to pitch the book at all?
Yeah, I can. So this is about I think he's like 18 years old. It's this half elf, half goblin young man, and he is quite separated from the throne. There's like 3 or 4 predecessors before he would become emperor, and they were all on this like airship, and it crashed, and suddenly this kid it's like, surprise, you're emperor now. And so it's a story about him becoming emperor and trying to figure out what to do and who to trust, and just being
That's where
thrust
we
into
start.
all the politics.
Yeah. Which I generally do like. I think a lot of what I'm going to say today is going to be that I like this in concept more than in execution.
I would agree.
So also you said that he was 18, which I think before reading this, I was like, oh, this is YA. I said this to you kind of
Yeah.
before we went live, and it didn't feel YA to me at all.
No, it
So I'd
didn't.
like to retract any statements I said regarding that. But
Yeah.
yeah. I want to know what everyone rated it, I guess. I want you to tell me before I tell you. And
Okay.
everyone else can tell us.
So I had originally rated it like a 3.5 after finishing it.
Okay.
But before I've kind of sat with it, I think it's probably either like a 3 or a 2.75.
Okay.
I think as time has gone on, I'm like, I don't know that I got much out of it, which is making me like look back on it and think maybe it wasn't 3.5.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. Martine said 2.5 stars. I think that I'm even at like a 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly on comprehension. I think a lot of that just did not make sense. And the parts that I did get, though, I'm giving it the 1.5, not like this was terrible. Just because I do think in concept it was better. And I also think that this is obviously like a me problem, and like I should be able to read names that are not just like common Western names, but the reading of the names and places was just like really hard to get past. It made me just like, I don't know who anybody was or where they were, which just makes it overall hard to follow.
Yeah. I had very similar issues with like once we got to court and we're like constantly being introduced to people and we're like having to try to keep track of it. Like I was using the back of the book so much
And
to like
I'm not gonna flip. Like,
yeah.
that's just me as a reader. I know it started with like a huge list of who everyone is. Like, I don't want to have to read that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it also is struggling because we were introduced to so many characters and places and things happening that it's like you can't grasp right away which ones are going to be important.
Yeah.
So I also think in general, I feel like this wasn't great as a first book in a series because I feel like almost that she was assuming we understood some aspects of the world, or just like she needed to get me with some like character connection or place connection or politics connection before we started getting all of this. Like it just felt like we were going through a list of
Yeah.
the people we needed to talk to and see and figure out without even like having that base. Why do we care?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I was able to go with it through like part 1 and even part 2. I was like, okay, We're being introduced to a lot of people. He's overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed. We can kind of feel that. But then as we got into parts 3, 4, and 5, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm still not like there
I don't
with
have
the
enough to
characters.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go back to what we were doing before we, like, keep moving on here. I
Yeah.
also was thinking that a better first book may have just been inserting us with the previous emperor,
Yeah.
and then this being, like, a second book. Like, it really just felt like we missed some initial world building to me.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it was interesting because I was just editing my vlog that I read this book in.
Mm,
And as I was reading it, I kept saying, like, I love the world. I think it's so
yeah.
interesting. I really like the world. And then I was like thinking back on it and I was like, I think I liked what the world was promising, but not what we got by the end of the
I
book.
think she had a good idea in her head
Yeah.
and didn't explain it to us well.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
Martine's saying that Ruby can't be here, but they talked about the book. Oh, yeah, that's literally what I just said after
Mhm.
that the author probably had this elaborate world in mind and then needed a story. Because Ruby
Yeah.
did say in the Discord chat that she was like, "Where was the plot?"
Mhm.
And I agree with needing a glossary that long is criminal. Like, it's something, like, show don't tell. Like, can we learn these people and not just have a list of their names and who they are? Like, can we learn them slowly and
Yeah.
care? I think I like it because it feels like a cozy fantasy. I also could have fair I could have hurt my rating by, like, trying to read it quickly, but I also think this is something that I probably if I would have tried to read it slowly, I would have gotten even more confused by stepping away and trying to come back. Like,
Yeah.
my reading habits, I think that this probably actually was better for me to just read
Yeah,
it straight
like
through.
taking time off and then trying to come back to all the
Yeah, to,
names.
like, come back and be like, "I don't know a single name."
Yeah.
Okay, the names are awful, but my reading improved when I used the audiobook with the physical book.
Mhm.
Um, did you listen to it or did you read it with your eyes?
I was really struggling in, like, the last 3 hours, and I was like, "I wonder if my library has my audiobook," and I got the audiobook and listened to it, and it did help just I don't know, because it was, like, one of those where I didn't wanna read the pronunciation guide at the end. I was like, "That's
Mhm.
too much work to try to figure out." So, when I was reading it physically, I'm just kinda, like, skimming over the names a
Mm,
little
mhm.
bit.
Oh, yeah.
So, listening to it definitely, I think, like, made going through the story a little
Just
smoother.
smoother. Right.
But I think at that point, I kind of knew, like, the things that I had been interested in, I knew weren't gonna go anywhere. Things that
Yeah,
kinda wrapped up, and I was like, "I just need to get to the end."
yeah. I probably would've, but I had already used my Spotify hours, and I
Mm.
don't think any of my libraries had it. I just realized Chris was not outside, and now he's, like, literally right in front of this window outside, like, seeding the yard. Like, somebody's in my yard. Um, yeah, I've had complex fantasy worlds that made sense the way they were introduced, and this was not one of those. I agree. 'Cause I always think like, my favorite, like, political fantasy series is Jade City. To
Yeah,
me, it's like that could be described as, like, a very complex fantasy
yep,
world, but, like, I never struggled, like, understanding and getting into that,
yeah,
where it is, like so I feel like through book club and reading stuff that I don't necessarily choose for myself sometimes, there's been so many books that I'm like, "I'm just not into this, like, the writing doesn't work for me," and then people will be like, "Oh, Bailey doesn't like fantasy," or "Bailey doesn't like this," and it's like, "I like some of 'em."
mhm. Yeah, no, I agree that, like, there are lots of fantasy worlds that I think are much better introduced. Like,
And
I
I'm
read a lot
thinking
of
too that if the
Sanderson.
names were more readable, everything would've flowed better.
Yes. I totally agree. Like, I remember, like, opening the book to the first page and seeing some of the names, and I was like,
Oh.
"Uh-oh."
Yeah, if it was only a few, like, if there was
Yeah,
only a few, they would have stood out.
uh-huh,
I think the error came when we were getting so many so fast.
yeah.
Physical, yeah, I was looking at it with my eyes. Made me mad because it wasn't even oh, here's a name, here's how to pronounce it. Oh, yeah, there was this long thing about certain sounds being pronounced a certain way,
Yeah.
which I don't remember if it said, like, what the, like, language was based off of in terms of, like, actual other languages, but
Yeah, I don't remember. I didn't read that far. I skimmed over a little bit of it, and then I
yeah.
was like, "No."
I also think that I had started to read through the list, and then I realized how long the list was and was like, "Okay, no."
And what's funny is I remember, like, needing to look something up in the glossary because I was like, "I don't know what that
Mm,
is." And I looked it up and it wasn't there.
not helpful. Oh my
I'm like, "I
gosh.
don't know what
What
what we're
why
talking
is there a 15-page glossary if it doesn't even have everything?
about."
That is telling. Um, I guess I kinda wanna talk about parts that we did like.
Mhm.
You gave it a pretty high rating.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't, like, terrible, I think the beginning half, I was really into it, and then it was in the last half that it started losing me a little bit.
I think at the
Um
beginning of a book, it's always, like, you have the anticipation that, like, it's gonna click and, like, really start flowing. So, like,
Mhm.
the further I was getting almost was like, "Okay, nope, still not getting it," like, still not like, I feel like
Yeah,
the first part of any book, you're, like, locked in just trying to learn.
mhm.
Yeah. I liked the second half better. I think there were
Interest
parts of the second half that I liked better. Like, the
Mhm.
last little bit, I really understood and felt like I understood the point and the
Mhm.
plot that the author was trying to make.
Yeah,
Um, like, circling back to Maya needing I'm not even sure if that's how his name is pronounced. Maya, is that what we're going with?
that's what I said.
Okay. Um like, needing to find a bride and, like, who would take over from him being like, "I don't want this, so you need to have a son," like, all of that, like, political stuff kind of working itself out.
Yeah.
It was like I understood what was trying to happen there, and I still was just like, I did not follow the plot of how we got here well enough.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, the connections were not
Mhm.
but I was like, "Yes, there's something here. There could have been something here."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Maya was definitely, like, the highlight for me because he was just such an understandable character, like, it was easy to empathize with him and what he's going through and kind of having this feeling of how things kinda, like, switched on a dime. Because like, very early on when he, like, first learns he's emperor,
Mhm.
it's kinda like he goes from having no power and he's with his uncle who treats him terribly to being like, "I can tell my uncle what to do. If I don't like him, I could probably have him executed," like, and you just suddenly have all this power and it's, like, overwhelming. And so I think there were, like, so many times where it's like I was just enjoying reading about him, like when he was sort of developing that friendship with like his bodyguards, and then
Mhm.
was kind of like, maybe we can't be friends, but I'm really lonely. Like,
Yeah.
all of those like more emotional things with
I mean, yeah,
Maya,
the
like
big part of
that's
it
what I
was
like.
that he, like, came into this power and had no advisors, had no
Yeah.
right, like, anything. Uh,
Hmm.
have you read Throne of Glass?
I have not.
Okay. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say anyway. It was kind of giving to me which this is, like, directly, like, father-son, but it was
Hmm.
giving, like, Dorian being the complete opposite of his dad, and so, like, when he was gonna assume rule, like, they had such different politics that, like, his dad didn't necessarily want him to be who was gonna precede him, but that's a more direct,
Mm,
like, father to son to son to
Yeah.
son lineage,
Mhm.
which this wasn't. But like how Maya's politics were so much different than who he was taking over from
Yeah.
reminded me of that. And
Yeah.
I like Throne of Glass, so I recommend it. It's so weird that like Throne of Glass has been popular so long to like pitch it to anybody is funny. I also loved his nephew Idro or something like that. Is that the one who at the end who's the one who would have been his like if he died was gonna have to rule?
That was him, like, it
Yeah.
was when there was that, like, plot to,
There's
like,
a conversation
kill
at
him.
the end of he's like, I don't want it, so
Yeah.
yeah, again, that's where my little 1.5 is getting thrown in. Because I feel like when people see a 1-star review, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this was straight up bad, terrible," and the point
Mhm.
5 of me saying like, "Wasn't very readable, but it wasn't garbage."
Yeah. Yeah. I know,
Yeah.
I've, like there's part of me that's debated about continuing on in the series because the
Mhm.
next
I do like to ask
3
them.
books follow the witness for the dead. That guy who is, like, off solving the mystery, like, that's who's
Oh.
the main character of, like, the next book. So, there's part of me that's like, I
Oh.
wonder if I would like that better. Like, I don't know. I think they're more like mystery fantasy books,
Oh.
which is kind of intriguing.
To me, though,
I
where
don't
this
know.
flopped is the writing, so I don't think I
Mm,
would read
yeah,
anything else by the author. Is
yeah.
this a debut? Question mark? I'm gonna look.
I think it was a debut. I think I looked that up.
Um, 2014 it came out. She has a lot, like, since then. Original
Mhm.
publication year. Um, it looks like she was, like, a co-author on something before this, but this was, like, her first solo book.
Okay. Yeah.
She has a newer series that started in 2021.
Hmm.
Okay, now we know. Where were we? I'd like seeing all the characters realize that Maya is a reasonable ruler, that he is so unlike his father. They are surprised and slowly start to trust him. Yeah. I mean, that's the point of the book in my eyes. Like, that was the point is that he was going around and being like, and everyone was like, we don't like this. I want to call it a colony. What are they? This lineage. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
he was going and proving them wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked how like when he became emperor and he got to like choose his name,
Mm,
and like kind of, present himself as like I'm
yeah.
sort of cutting off this way of ruling that my dad had
Uh-huh.
and the people before him, and we're gonna go back to like a completely different time, like a
Reset.
more peaceful, better for everyone time.
Yeah. I've never read so much about bridges in a book before. That's I think when Elsa asked about it being steampunk, I was right before we were like really getting into the bridges thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know, but I stand by my response of that like I don't really know what constitutes steampunk, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it definitely like at least has some steampunk elements, like the airships and stuff is
Yeah.
usually very steampunk. So
I'm also not a visual reader though, and when I think steampunk, I think of like the like outfits.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
so it's just not what I see. Also, them saying that they're goblins and elves. Like, what are we picturing here? I don't know. I'm picturing people. So
Yeah, that was
that's the main
interesting.
issue. Danielle. Sorry, I'm late. I saw DNF this. Didn't hate it because the audiobook, but I just couldn't do it by the meeting. Oh, you weren't gonna finish in time. I'm like, what is happening here with this sentence? How far did you get, Danielle? And based on that, Enjoyment, ? I did find the Witness for the Dead concept interesting, but it's not horrifically different from the Speaker for the Dead from the Ender's Game books. I know Martine is an Ender's Game fan.
I've only read the first one, so I don't think I got to the Speaker.
I think I tried to read them and didn't like them. And Martine, I feel like when they talk about it, I'm like, maybe I should try. And then I'm like, no, Bailey, you don't need to retry things that you didn't like. Oh, Elsa says that she will keep going. Interesting. I also feel like that depends on, like, some people are more completionists than I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one that it, like, you know, if I stumbled across it at the library at the right time, I would like pick it up, but I don't know if I'm gonna like seek it out.
That's also, though, like, you chose this, so this fits
Mhm.
into what you typically are into.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily say the same. So
Mhm.
it's something that I would say, like, well, yeah, if it came up in a book club to read the next one, then yeah, I'd probably participate in the book club, but it's like,
Yeah.
why would a second book in a series squash that series? No. That's literally how I end up sometimes reading sequels to books I didn't like, is because of squash that series prompts. I feel like how Martine felt with the names and writing, but because I always immersion read the audiobook, made the pronunciation flow well, and I could still follow along. I don't know, there was still just, I think if I listened to the audiobook, I still would have been like, what? Just because there was so many names. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, Danielle, if you were not to the part yet where we literally get like, okay, here's a new group of people. Okay, here's a new group of people. Here's a new group of people. Because I think that the audiobooks still would not have kept me on pace.
Yeah. I didn't find that it helped that much. I think it just, you know, I'd be listening and when they would say a name, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what that person is. And then
Yeah.
some of the people I was like, I don't really know who that is, but it's probably not important.
There were more sections I highlighted because I sent a couple in the Discord chat of just like, what? Because it would be like, person we've never heard of, place, like, of these.
Yep.
I laughed at what Martine said of the names registering just as like gibberish, random typing. Yeah. I'm like, literally. And it's like 5 in a row. Okay, not that far in. How long? Anybody who listened to the audiobook, how long was the full audiobook?
I don't remember how long it was.
I read like 4 hours today, but the whole book
Maybe like
took me
16 or 18 hours, something like that.
Yeah, the whole book took me like 8 hours to read. That's definitely not YA pace, I'll tell you that much.
No. No, I wouldn't classify this as YA.
It's listed on
all?
Goodreads as
Like,
YA. No.
yeah.
Like, didn't feel YA, like, if he's 18, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's on Goodreads, it's listed as young adult. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think on Storygraph
it is
it has
listed as
young adult as well.
steampunk.
Oh, yeah.
Almost 18 hours, Elsa said. Yeah. That's a big book.
Yeah.
It is a big book.
It is.
What else? Other thoughts and feelings?
Let me look at my notes. I did take notes on some things.
Yeah.
Oh,
have you came to a Shelf This live show ever before this? I probably should have warned you, these are not very organized. They're ramble discuss. No particular order discussion.
Yeah, no worries. I just take notes because if I don't, I have a terrible memory and I'll like come on and be like, I don't know what I read. So I took notes as I
usually do what I did and just like read it the day before. And then also I have the bad habit of like, even when I like a book, all I have to talk about is the things I didn't like. Um, so
I
yeah.
think something that I wish there was more of was more magic. Like I like my
Mhm.
fantasy to be very magical. And I think you were saying earlier, like when you were picturing them, you weren't picturing like goblins and
Yeah,
elves and
they
just
didn't
people.
describe.
I had the same thing where I was like, I don't
Oh, yeah.
feel like we're in some like fantasy realm
No.
where magic is real and things are happening. There was the time when the bodyguard used magic to protect him. The
Mhm.
witness for the dead, like waking up the
Mhm.
dead person to speak to them, and I don't that was kind of it. Like I was like, man, I wish there was just more.
It is, like, just something would happen to give you, like, the, "Oh, yeah." But
Right.
it didn't, like, you genuinely feel.
Yeah.
I was describing this to my sister, and she was like, "If a teen tried to read that, they would learn to hate reading." People with huge pointy ears and long fingers. It was a regular world with very expressive ears. Yeah, funny. Yeah, I don't read a lot of books with creatures at all.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing I can think of is Ice Planet Barbarian. Like, literally at all. I can't think of anything that I, like, love that has it.
Mhm. I feel like it used to be more common in like I don't know, like 80s, 90s
Yeah,
fantasy. There was
I think
more like
trend.
when D&D was popular, like all the
Yeah,
Forgotten Realms books and things like that
I feel like
were
stuff like
very like
this was popular, and then it was, like, vampires, and then
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays it's fairly rare to like have like an elf main character or something a lot of times. Fae is kind of popular right now.
Yes,
That
extremely.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Are goblins green? They're not ogres. I picture a goblin as, like, I can picture it in my head, but I can't say it out loud. Um, not that I think that's what Dobby is, but, like, I kinda picture a goblin looking like Dobby from Harry Potter.
Yeah, I
Is
can see
that, but, like, maybe fatter,
that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
like, is kind of what I picture in my head. Yeah, unfortunately. Fae and vampires are in, and goblin emperors are out. I feel like, though, like, fantasy creatures are not happening as much as, like, I feel like horror, like, the horror genre is really popular right now, so they're getting all the good
Yeah.
creatures.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Google goblins, they are green. Alright, I'm googling goblins. Okay, those look scarier, I guess, than I would think, but is Dobby a goblin? I'm trying to think.
He's like an elf, right? He is a house elf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not all of these goblins are green, Danielle, but yeah.
I feel like I pictured them the goblins like Rumpelstiltskin from Once Upon a Time. Just like human with like slightly strange skin.
Martine's saying none of the goblins in this book were green. Okay, yeah, fine. I get it. I'm sorry. I've temporarily removed myself from the series. It's been a while. Marvel is also, I think, green, which I also am unfamiliar with Marvel. So. I pictured nothing, and their names were keyboard smashes, so you can imagine how confusing it was to keep track of people. I can't imagine, because I was feeling the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was like the biggest downfall. I wonder if like she went back to rewrite it now, if she would do it differently. Like
Wasn't
if
there
she's
a series?
improved in that aspect.
There was a series that was rewritten. Oh, the Bone season was rewritten. I want to talk to
Oh
somebody
yeah.
who really read it, and then like, is that allowed? You can go back and read the book that you wrote years ago. I think my takeaway generally is that I would not read from this author again, but I would read something very similar to this
Yeah.
book again. Like I would try this concept again,
Mhm.
but probably not this author again.
Yeah. I really like the structure of the story of like young person being thrust into power and having to figure things out. I think it's a very interesting premise. It just
Again,
didn't.
concept versus execution is
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at,
Yeah.
but fun. Any final thoughts?
I don't think so.
Either there was less like specific things I feel like that happened in the book that
Mhm.
were like, huge things to talk about. I like the messages in the story, but the payoff for the work was a bit unsatisfying. Well, again, for how long it was, for like how little actual plot and things happening.
Yeah.
Also, like I think Martine had mentioned like feeling like the book was like a project to get through, which I was also feeling by the end. So
Mhm. Yeah, I was too.
hey, Cheyenne. Thank you, Cheyenne, for picking.
Yeah.
I hope you'll stick around and keep an eye on what other books we pick, but this works that we go in a big circle. So eventually I'll come back to you and say, hey, do you
Yeah.
want to book again? Um, yeah, it's fun. It's a good time. And I forgot last month I didn't mention in our live show that last month's live show was our 4-year anniversary, which seems a little crazy.
Well,
That seems a little crazy. This is like this and Squash It series are like my little babies I hold on to, where I'm always like, I can't stop doing YouTube even when I'm super busy because it's like those two things are so important to me.
mhm.
I appreciate you participating and picking a book and picking something fun. We don't get a lot of fantasy a lot, I feel like. I also feel like a dummy because 2 months in a row were books that I had like low comprehension with. Last month we read Northwoods and I was like, I didn't
Mm.
understand. So, and Elsa just asked me what book is next month, and so I'm kind of rushing to figure. It's a thriller picked by Rylan from Reading with
Yeah,
Rylan,
I
and
think
I'm
that
about to find it and tell you which one it is. I literally finished this book 5 minutes before the live show, so I didn't have much time to prepare what I like. I didn't even pull up the next month's
Yeah.
book.
Is it the with like My Little Eye
My
one?
Little Eye by Jocelyn Jackson.
I have it out from the library, so I can.
And it's a mother and daughter running away from a stalker.
Mm,
So
I
that's
haven't
something
read
different too. We haven't
that
read like a true thriller in a while. So I'm
one.
excited
Mhm.
to get in a thriller mood.
Yeah.
We shall see. Yes, I do like that's the point of the book club. So I feel like I come on so often being like, this isn't typically for me, which is the point of
Yeah.
this existing, is that I always tell everyone to pick something that they do typically read, but that the rest of us haven't, which is the point. And I'm the only one who sits here and is forced to read them every single time. I know some other people who participate only read the ones that also interest them, but
Mhm.
it's a good experience for me. So, next month, thriller with My Little Eye. Every time I think about how long I've known you, I'm like, for real? Yes, for real. For real. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you again.
Thanks for
And we'll
having
see.
me.
I will try to. You guys all notice that I am not doing things quickly. I literally scheduled this 2 hours ago, but I try to stay on top of things. So I will try to post next month as soon as possible. Okay. Bye.
Bye.